Hey everybody! The other day I was shooting a video and I was talking about the filter in my quarantine tank, and I was complaining about how the filter pad is hard to change, so I basically just leave the filter pad out. And someone asked me, how do I keep the tank up and running without a filter in it? And my first thought was, well, I've got a filter in it, I just don't have a filter pad in it. And then that got me to thinking, I think it's probably time we have another conversation about filtration in our aquariums. I've shot video about this before, but it's been a while, so it's probably time that I shoot some more and we talk about it again. So basically, a filter does three things in your aquarium. I'm not going to talk about all of the bells and whistles you can get with different kinds of filters, where you can put the different types of substrate in it or different types of medium in it, and it's got the UV light and all that stuff. I'm talking about basic filtration. You can think of a hang on the back filter. It goes in, it goes through a mechanical filter, it then goes through your little black spongy biological filter, and then the water flows back into the tank. Your basic simple filtration. So you got three things going on there. You got your mechanical filtration, you've got your biological filtration, and then you've got your circulation. And the circulation is by far the most important thing your filter does, and we're going to save that for last. So first, you've got your mechanical filtration. Contrary to popular belief, your mechanical filter does not remove all of the waste and detritus, and we'll just call it fish poop. It does not remove that from your tank. It removes it from your site, but it does not remove it from your tank. It's still in there, it's just trapped in the filter pad. The filter pad allows it to be easier to remove, much the same way a diaper makes a mess easier to clean up in one location rather than cleaning it up all over the place. You've got your filter pad that collects it all right there. You remove the filter pad and put a new one in and you're good to go again. That doesn't mean it's not in your tank. It's still very much in your tank. The water's still flowing through it. It's passing right back into the tank. It's just out of your sight. You can think of it as being swept under the carpet, so to speak. It's just being kind of kept in one location until you get to it. So, keeping that in mind, if it was swirling around your tank, it wouldn't change anything other than what your tank looks like. It's not doing anything other than making it look prettier as far as keeping your tank clean. Now, if you've got a loose gravel and all of the detritus sort of settles in, or if you get in there every day or two with the gravel vac and you just clean the corners out, you don't need to have that mechanical pad in there that filters that stuff out. That's just to make it easier to collect it in one spot. You can think of it as like the central vac in a house, where you just sweep everything to one spot, it gets sucked up, and then you've got one bin to remove rather than room after room after room. This is the same thing. It's sucking all that stuff out of the tank, it's collected in one filter pad that you can simply remove, but it's still in the tank. It's still got water flowing through it, it's still going right back into your tank, and so that's all that does. So you can live without the mechanical filter, provided you're willing to either clean your tank more frequently or just whatever. We move on to the biological filter, and that basically is nothing more than a housing development. You can just think of it as real estate. It's just a space for ammonia oxidizing bacteria, or we call it beneficial bacteria, to live. That's all it is. It doesn't do anything other than provide space for that bacteria to live. So if you've got tanks like mine that have lots of woodwork and plants and gravel and rocks and substrate, there's real estate all over the tank for that beneficial bacteria to live in that. It doesn't need to be in the filter per se. It just needs to have surface area to live on. So if you've provided it with surface area, you don't need to have that little black sponge in your filter. The reason we put the black sponge in the filter is because the water is flowing, and of course this bacteria can't go get its food being the ammonia and nitrite, of course, and so we have to bring the food to the bacteria. And that's what brings us to the third and final part of what the filter does, which is critical, and that is the circulation. That's what moves the water around. That's what collects all of the debris and detritus in the filter pad. If it wasn't for that circulation, it wouldn't get caught in that pad. And most importantly, if it wasn't for that circulation, you wouldn't have water moving over your biological sponge, or the colonies of bacteria that allow the oxidation of that ammonia and the breakdown of the ammonia into nitrite and your nitrogen cycle to happen. So if you don't mind a little bit of waste swirling around in your tank, and you've provided surface area for the nitrifying bacteria to live in other parts of your tank, you don't need the filter pad, you don't need the little black spongy pad thingy in there. All you're using your filter for at this point is circulation, because you still got to move the water around the tank to move the ammonia rich water to the places where it's been oxidized, and you still need the circulation. And so that's the key ingredient that you've got with your filter, is to move that water around the tank. Can you achieve circulation without a filter? Sure. You put a power head in the tank, you can put an air stone in the tank, you can do lots of stuff to make water circulate around the tank. And as long as you've got that, then you've got your nitrogen cycle happening right within your tank. So I've got tanks that I set up to basically be fail-safe. I'm not immune to forgetting to plug a filter back in, or sometimes a filter will get a piece of grit stuck in it and it'll seize up on you. And I've done this in the past. I've had filters shut down because I forgot to, shut down because I've unplugged them and then forgot to plug them back in. And I've got enough circulation in my tank via other means, mainly power heads, that I didn't even notice that the filter had shut down. I still had so much water circulating around the tank, I didn't realize it wasn't coming from the filter moving the water around the tank. But when I realized it had been 3 or 4 days had gone by, a couple days had gone by, and the inside of the filter was nasty. I had to clean all that out and everything. That had died because it had been sitting there too long. The tank was fine though. As soon as I got my filter back up and running, everything was just perfectly normal. And it was like I could have left the filter off if I wanted. I could have just left the tank running the way it was. And that was my big 125 over here. I've done it to my T-bar tank, and my native tank has been left without a filter on it for a couple days on a few occasions. But I've got big power heads, and I've got lots of rocks and substrate. They're well established, and so I just don't have issues with that. It's very easy to manage a tank without a filter. You have to set it up to be a tank without a filter, though. Every time I talk about this, I always have somebody say, oh yeah, if you can have a tank without a filter, why don't you just go take a filter off your tank? I'm not saying you can just remove your filter from your tank. If you set a tank up to run without a filter, it's very easy to do. All you need is habitat for the nitrifying bacteria and water circulation. And as long as you've got that and you're willing to keep on top of cleaning the physical debris out of the tank, that's all you need. You don't have to have a filter on your tank. Now again, if you want to put activated carbon in there, which I don't use, I don't use any of that. I use a mechanical filter, and then I use biological filtration, and that's it. It's very simple, and the only reason I even do that is for the aforementioned purposes of ease of keeping the tank clean. I still have to get in and gravel vac occasionally, or clean out the corners and underneath the rocks, but for the most part, you do your filter change and you've done all that, and it just makes it nice and easy. But you don't need the filter on there by any means. So I hope that answers all your questions. I hope that doesn't cause any more questions. My videos usually tend to raise more questions than they answer, but that's okay, because that'll be food for another video. So thanks for watching this one. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're wondering, the tank behind me is the one I call my waterfall tank, so I'll put a playlist up for that. Thanks again for watching this one, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.